And let me find out how to share the screen here again to share the meeting minutes. So I hope you can see them.
Yeah.
I think I also pasted the link to them to the chat if you want to add something. So I guess we should be ready to start. So the first point on the agenda is questions and issues. Vijay, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about something more about your use case?
Uh, right now, I just have that problem that I understand. So, okay, because I have to give an introduction to the use case. So basically what I want is I have a Kubernetes control plane on the edge, and then I have multiple Raspberry Pis which are present on citizens' home, and these are in different networks. So like, for example, if we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people right now, everyone has Raspberry Pi stored in their houses, in which there are sensors sending data to the Raspberry Pi, local Kafka cluster or a broker, and we want to send it to the cloud. Now the thing is, because they are all different networks, what I'm doing is like I'm having a replication factor of 1, and I wanted that if there is a sensor, let's say indoor air quality, sending data to the local Raspberry Pi and local broker Kafka cluster, the topic would be mirrored to the cloud using Apache Mirror Maker. Now, what I wanted is basically how to efficiently use Strimzi operator to deploy this particular case. So Jakub said that you should probably use um, one. So like you should basically have a YAML file with Zookeeper and Kafka, just saying that okay, it's a one cluster, and use pod affinity and anti affinity to deploy clusters on individual nodes or the Raspberry Pis at the home. Now my only thing is, because I'm doing this quite very dynamically, like for example, if there are 5 more people coming, then I need to add manually define a YAML file and change the cluster name to that particular home, and then apply it. Is there a better way or automatic way of it? Yeah, so like first of all, did you understood more or less the environment?
So I think one important thing to clarify is when you have the edge clusters, the Raspberry Pi clusters.
Yeah.
Are these just worker nodes with a central control plane somewhere in the cloud, or are these a separate Kubernetes clusters?
No, these are basically worker nodes at different citizens' house with a central Kubernetes control plane. So if I can share my screen, I can show you the architecture also, if you guys are interested in that.
Let me figure out. Because I'm not really a daily Zoom user.
Okay, no issues.
So let me figure out how
you
to
have
do this.
Yeah, you have to enable host like participation sharing. Yeah, okay, I think I can do it now.
Yeah, I think you should be able to do it now.
Yeah, so I have something like this. On the cloud, I have multiple things like free IPA, Puppet, Kubedge, Cloud, and Kafka, InfluxDB, etc. On the edge, like for example, if we are 5 people, I have one Raspberry Pi where I want to run Apache Kafka cluster, and then I have sensors, which is like smart citizen kits or smart plug sending data to the local Kafka cluster, and which is basically mirrored back to the cloud side. and I want to use Strimzi to deploy Kafka clusters automatically. Previously, what I was doing was I was creating containers of one Zookeeper and one Kafka and one Mirror Maker and deploying it manually on that. The problem with that was that it was not very secure. Everything was plain text.
Yeah, I think the only way how to do this would be that anytime a new edge worker node connects,
Yeah.
that you make sure it has some unique label, and then basically you have to deploy a fresh Kafka cluster.
Yeah.
Which would then have all the affinities, the node affinities configured to target this specific node. I don't think there's other way around it. And to be honest, when we discussed before the daemon sets and so on,
yeah,
I think that's probably still easier than having a cluster with one broker on each of these nodes, and then having kind of managing that the topics with the single replica are actually scheduled on this node. I think deploying the separate cluster, that's probably still a bit easier.
Okay. So if I deploy the separate cluster, then I have to manage the topics and everything for each cluster then, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But
that
you don't have to care about where the topic is located, because it will be automatically located on the single broker which the cluster has.
Okay.
Which will be on the Raspberry. To be honest, what I'm wondering about is, yeah, I think some of these things might get a bit easier if you would run the edge as a fully featured Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah, but I think like the problem with that is like it would be just too much overhead, I believe. Like I mean to say, like for example, if I'm just using one Raspberry Pi for one citizen house, running a Kubernetes plane is like a little overkill. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to fit everything in, you might need the 8 gig one.
Yeah.
So how good do you expect the connection to be between the edge and the cloud side?
So I expect it to be fairly stable. Like for example, if we see KubeEdge is basically maintains that even if the connection between the cloud and the edge get disturbed, it would maintain the states.
Yeah, to be honest, usually when I talked with or heard about people using this kind of architecture with the Kafka on the edge,
yeah,
usually the main use case they had for that was that they had unstable or kind of temporary connection between the edge and the central cluster.
Yeah.
And they kind of wanted to use Kafka as the cache, basically.
Yeah.
So that, for example, the sensors can be sending the data there 24/7, but I don't know if you would have it on some ship or something. When the ship gets into the port and connects, then they would suddenly kind of sync all the data into the cloud.
Yeah.
But so if you would expect that the connection is there all the time, then I wonder if it wouldn't be much easier to use some HTTP proxy or something.
Yeah, so like the problem with that is like, see, we want to give control to the citizen that okay, if you don't want to upload the upload the data to the cloud, we would not deploy Apache Mirror Maker at the edge. The second thing is On the other hand, like if you see on a normal day, the broadband connection in anyone's house is basically gets disconnected for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So we do want to cover that. So like, for example, there would be Wi-Fi connectivity in the house, but internet connection would just go up and down. So we want to take care of that scenario also. So that's why I was particularly want Kafka at the edge also. Yeah. And plus then it's quite very good in terms of like Kafka streams and processing stuff also. So yeah.
Okay. Paolo, you have a lot of IoT experience. Do you have some opinion on this or some advice?
I have just joined, Jakub, so sorry. I completely lost all the discussion right now. Sorry, I was late.
Okay. Shall I explain it to you if you want?
No, I can even watch the recording later, and maybe we can
Okay.
see on Slack
All right. Cool.
to move forward. Yeah.
So as of now, then, Jakub, the only way is to basically create YAML files for each of the cluster, use pod affinity and anti affinity to deploy clusters on it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to use the pod anti-affinity. All you really need is the node affinity to
Okay.
basically tell the components you want to run on the edge to
Okay.
schedule to the right Raspberry Pi node.
Okay.
And I
And
think that should be all what's needed. What I'm a bit curious about is how well does, for example, the operator handle it to operate kind of the cluster running on the edge. But yeah, I'm afraid I
okay.
I don't really know. That's just something what has to be tried.
Okay. Um, um, like previously, as we said that, okay, if we deploy replicas, and like you told me that there could be a problem with following the leader thing. Isn't that something which can be solved somehow? Like we say that, okay, uh, because all are in different, all Raspberry Pis would be in a different network. So uh, can we just say that, okay, you are the leader, you stay that way?
So Kafka works as a distributed system, right? So you
Yeah.
have a cluster of well, let's keep it really simple with of 3 brokers,
Yeah.
and then inside the cluster you create a topic where you, for example, say this should have so many partitions, like 10 partitions with replication factor 3. And
Yeah.
what it will do is that it will create these 10 partitions, and
Yeah.
each of them will have 3 replicas which will be distributed across the brokers.
Yeah.
And the default way how they would work is that always one of the replicas will be a leader, and
Yeah.
that's where the producers and most consumers will be communicating with. And
Okay.
so like for the partition 1 of the first topic, the leader will be the broker 1. For the partition 2 of the same topic, the leader will be broker 3. And then maybe for the partition 10 of completely different topic, the leader will be the broker 3. And
Okay.
you can schedule the topics, you can schedule, if you would create it with one replica, for example, you can schedule where, on which broker is the replica located manually if you want. And that can help in theory. But so if you would run it as a one big cluster with a broker on each of these edge nodes,
Yeah.
then yeah, there would still be issue with a zookeeper, whether, because the Kafka cluster, it's not a zookeeper per broker, it's zookeeper cluster per Kafka cluster basically. So yeah, you would basically need to have the zookeeper running centrally in the cloud and just have the Kafka brokers be running on the edge. And I'm not sure how well that would work kind of across the distance. That might be one challenge, but there would be still a challenge. So if you would scale this into thousands of devices, you would need suddenly to have a Kafka cluster with thousands of brokers, and all these would need to be scheduled. And on top of these, you will need to schedule a topic hosted with the lead replica hosted on the right edge node for each of these Raspberry Pis and so on. So I think that will be complicated to set up and would not scale well.
Okay. Can you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you see, like, just again a question, can we create one topic with one partition only?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. In that case, if we do it that way, so like I was just reading more about this pod affinity thing, and here what they are trying to do is deploy Redis and Nginx web server using pod affinity and anti-affinity. So if we deploy one Kafka, if we deploy, let's say 3 replicas, okay, here it says 3 replicas, and using pod affinity and anti-affinity, we somehow get into this, like, okay, there is one zookeeper, there's one Apache Kafka, and the topics which we are defining are basically using one partition. Do you think it would work?
Not easily.
Okay.
So first of all, the zookeeper is kind of a central cluster.
Okay.
So again, it doesn't work that way that the Kafka connects to the zookeeper running next to it.
Okay.
It would connect to one of the zookeepers, basically, to
Okay.
one of the members of the cluster. But also, you don't want to have 1,000 zookeepers running in your cluster. You want to have, for example, 3, 5, 7 of them, but not
Okay.
one on each of these devices for a big shared cluster.
Okay.
And then the second problem is that, for example, the pod anti-affinity, or what it does is that basically you say, do not schedule this pod on a node where already some other pod matching these rules is running. So
Okay.
what that can do is this can make sure that when you would be running 1,000 pods, then, and you have 1,000 nodes, then each of these pods will be scheduled on a different node.
Okay.
But it doesn't give these nodes kind of the stickiness to the edge worker nodes. So if you would have 2 which crash at the same time, they can be scheduled differently. So the one which was now running in my house might end up being now scheduled on your edge worker node, and the one which was running in your house might get suddenly scheduled into my house. And so that's one challenge. And then the second challenge is that when you create a topic with one partition, you would really need to take care that it's actually hosted on the partition where on the Kafka broker, which is running in your house.
Yeah.
And that would be very challenging, I think, to kind of keep it long term when you have not fixed the broker node to the device through the node affinity. So you will always end up with the node affinity, I think.
Okay. So basically, this gentleman, Chris OS, he basically did something like similar. What, like, basically, I'm trying to replicate what he has done. He has done it using Docker Swarm, and I'm trying to use it Kubernetes and using Operator. He does the same, like deploys at the edge Kafka, where he deploys Apache Zookeeper and Kafka, and then replicate using a mirror maker. And like he basically deploys container with Zookeeper and Kafka and does it. So yeah, I was just trying to replicate this thing.
Yeah. So to be honest, I think it might have its reasons why not to use Kubernetes there, right? Because it makes it easier to kind of manage these nodes. You get less overhead.
This was in 2018. So at that point of time, I think operators, like I was not even aware of operators at that point of time. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not sure whether I don't know. I guess you would need to talk with someone who has a bit more practical experience about this, to be honest.
All right. Okay.
So
All right.
so I mean, we can definitely help to kind of advise how you can achieve this or that with Strimzi.
Yeah.
But I guess it would be good if you find someone and talk with someone who is running this pattern with Kubernetes and what the challenges will be in the kind of communication and stability and so on. I
All right.
don't think without having practical experience with that, it's quite hard to see how it would work, to be honest.
All right. Okay. No worries. Thank you very much. All right. Cool.
Does anyone else has anything else to this? Okay. Then I guess let me share the meeting minutes again. So anyone has any other questions and issues? If not, then I think there was one PR which I listed as that we should discuss it. Since we have Tom here, Tom Cooper. Tom, any
Yes.
plans to get back to this?
I would love to get back to this, Jakob. Yes, this is just about improving cruise control's user experience. The main issue being that at the minute we give a summary of what cruise control is planning to do, and it might say, yeah, we're going to move this many partitions, this many leaders, and I think it even gives you a measure of the megabyte size. Going to move this much megabytes. But what it doesn't tell you is how that will affect your cluster. It has a load score. It does kind of a balancedness score. Sorry, it says, oh, before it's this much balanced, and after it's this much balanced. And the problem is it doesn't tell you how that's going to affect the load, the various CPU and network and stuff, which might be something a user running the system might want to know. So this PR was originally about going, oh, we get all this information from cruise control. Can't we put it in the status? And I did that code, and it turned out that it's fine. But as soon as you have more than a couple of brokers, your status gets really, really long. And I tried various ways to maybe turn it into almost like a table form, comma separated stuff. But there's various parsing that happens inside the Fabricate client that messed all that up. So I think it was you, Jakob, who suggested, well, why don't we keep the summary and the status and shove all of this information in some kind of associated config map? And I think that's where the conversation ended. And then I got, distracted by maybe not bigger and better, but certainly other things. So I think I do think this is important. I do think that if you are running a cluster in Anger and you run cruise control and it's an absolutely massive thing, it would be nice to know if it was worth it by going, okay, is this actually going to appreciably improve things on this cluster or that cluster or the other cluster? So on this machine, sorry. So anyway, yeah, that's where we left it. So a lot of the code for getting the information and passing it's there. I just need to figure out how to attach it to a config map and do all of that, which I haven't got that yet.
Okay, then yeah, noted there that you plan to get back to it. So
at some point, I would like to get back to it.
There.
If there's anybody else in the community who's really keen, they can jump on it sooner.
Not hearing too many voices. Okay, anyone else has any PR or issue to discuss? Okay, then yeah, we have also 3 open proposals. So this got actually merged before the meeting. Paula merged and then removed it from the meeting minutes. Okay, then this one is closed. Okay, again, someone closed it and then removed it from the meeting minutes. Which leaves the encryption proposal. And I guess that's I think you are the main one who had comments there, Tom Bentley.
Yeah, yeah, I need to take another look at that, but I think we might be having a meeting with these guys next week. So I'll try and have another look at it before then, but I expect we'll end up, you know, sort of talking directly to them, with them,
Okay.
at them, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess the next point on the agenda are the CRD changes. Tom, I think you are thinking since last time about what we can do with these JVM options. And I think you mentioned somewhere that maybe it's best to keep it as it is.
Yeah, so I've spent probably a couple of days looking at this, initially thinking that option 2A, as described in this document, was the right way to go. And then thinking, no, probably option 1 is the right way to go. And so I spent quite a lot of time working on some code to do that, and just getting more and more bogged down and less confident that I could do it as a refactoring and not break stuff. Basically, what we sort of got here has become a bit of a tangled mess. And yeah, I think it needs some careful unpicking as to sort of what we do with all the different bits and pieces of this, because they get sort of passed around and mangled in multiple different places, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, all the things that we're doing. I'm pretty sure it could be simpler, but the question is whether you'd want to do that refactoring first before you start thinking about the sort of the schema change that you could then seek to implement once it had been simplified a bit. So yeah, I've still got some code knocking around which I could maybe share and see what other people think, but my sort of gut feeling is that it would be better to not break things, or maybe to just try to do something much simpler, where we just try renaming the XX to something else. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is I have looked at it, and I don't think it's as easy as I initially thought, and I need to reach some sort of conclusion about what exactly we should do, but I haven't quite got there yet, in summary.
Should we keep it in the agenda for next time?
Yes, let's, but I'll try to at least comment on the relevant issue before then, having come to a conclusion.
Okay, good. Sounds at least like a plan. So, anything else anyone wants to discuss? Any questions, issues, anything? Then I guess that's it for today.
Thanks, everyone.
So thanks for coming, and yeah, nice to have the discussion about the edge clusters change against going through all the same issues and PRs and proposals as usually. So thanks for coming, Vijay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Bye.